Live. Okay. Good afternoon. Good morning. Good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's Jeff, Godless Scammer, back again. I'm very, very happy to be welcoming Chris Shelton back to the channel. Also have the lovely Amanda, aka Momma Atheist, here to co-host this with me today. So the reason I invited Chris back and I really wanted to talk to him is it kind of goes back to the last time Chris was on. It was brought up in the live chat about Narconon centres opening in the UK, which I didn't know much about, but doing a little bit of digging, I found they've actually been established here a bit longer than I realised. And the thing I think that really so I wanted to look into that. Then something happened a few days ago, which I thought made this a bit more of an urgency, and I decided to reach out to Chris again. And that was the actress Whoopi Goldberg on I think it's a show called The View. Yes, she recommended to people who are like, obviously with the isolation going on, that if you go, people might be worried about falling back into bad habits or whatever that are, or addiction, so that she recommended Narconon to people. So I felt it was worth having a bit of a deeper look into Narconon and what it is, or what the claims they make, and how scientifically valid or not scientifically valid it is. So, Chris, welcome back.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll start with this. I'll just start with during your time in Scientology, were you still involved with Narconon as a program, or is it something you had much dealings with?
Narconon is something that we were briefed on constantly. And the management of Narconon, the unit that oversees all of the Narconons in various areas, was connected with what was in the same building, basically, as the one that I was working on for about 8 or 9 years. Narconon is a front group for Scientology. It's not officially Scientology. It's officially a secular group. But they're managed and run on a daily basis, and not just from an oversight position, but actual hands-on involvement with its operations by the Church of Scientology. And Scientology takes 100% credit for any Narconon successes or positive PR or newspaper, media, that kind of thing. So it's pretty much doing straight line Scientology when you're doing Narconon, but they veil it. They sort of have this, imaginary barrier between Narconon and the Church of Scientology that to make it seem like it's something different than what
they hid it for a really long time, didn't they? They wanted to make sure that people didn't know that they were connected at all. In fact, I think it was in Georgia was one of the first places where I am. Well, I wasn't there then, but about 6 years ago, that it broke that they were actually connected and they couldn't hide it any longer. Why did they do that?
Well, because Scientology's PR is rather toxic and has been for quite some time. And the other thing is it's a front group. There are many front groups for Scientology, which they call social betterment programs, SBCs. And they've got a whole thing on this. There's a criminal reform program called Criminon. There's a drug rehabilitation program, Narconon. There's applied scholastics, which is getting into the educational zone and is trying to teach teachers how to teach using L. Ron Hubbard's methods, which are insane. But they have a whole school outside of St. Louis where they bring teachers in and indoctrinate them on L. Ron Hubbard's educational stuff. So then there's Way to Happiness. They have a human rights. I mean, insanely hypocritical. They have a whole human rights front group that is trying to teach kids human rights. Ironically, they actually do a pretty decent job, but it's literally like the Nazis, trying to teach you about how to have better race relations or something. I mean, it's really whack that they're the ones promoting human rights to kids, but they are, so they have these different front groups that are attempting to create positive imagery and PR for L. Ron Hubbard. That's the connecting glue between all of these. Is you're going into a program, or they'll tell you you're going into a program that was developed by or based on the works of L. Ron Hubbard. They try to soften you up on him and how he's this amazing guy who came up with all these discoveries like drug rehabilitation, and then opens the door to, oh, well, what else did he do? And that's when you get into Scientology. Yeah. That's the imagined path that Scientology has put there for people to get into Scientology using these groups.
Okay. So how do they lure these people in if they're not Scientologists to begin with? How do they get these vulnerable people? It's not only the addicts that are vulnerable, but it's the families that are incredibly vulnerable. How do they get them to choose something like Narconon and not something more reputable, like going to an actual hospital, or even something like NA, which I don't agree with personally, but it's still better than this bullshit? How do they do that?
They do it basically through deception, PR, lies, manipulation. And by this I mean they used to put out, for example, that their success rate was 75 to 80%.
I've read that.
Yeah, which is
unheard of in the industry. It's ridiculous.
That's right. Industry standard was like 25%, I think, or something, which is already incredibly inflated and way too high. And then Narconon's putting out 75 to 80%. They base it off of studies, quote unquote, scientific studies that they had written.
No peer review at all. None.
Well, no, they were written by Scientologists who were doctors.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Hubbard was a doctor.
Yeah. Hubbard claimed himself to be a doctor at one point until that was so thoroughly debunked that it just becomes a joke to even claim it. Hubbard was a pathological liar. Let's be clear. And Scientology is a money-making scam. Let's be clear about that too. That is my position, and I can back that up. So this whole thing is really a money grab, and there is surprisingly a whole lot of money to be made in drug rehab. Now, it started innocently enough back in 69, 68, when a guy who was a drug addict, I guess, used, some Hubbard stuff and decided to come up with Narconon. And then Hubbard heard about it and kind of glommed it into Scientology, is how I understand it first formed. Hubbard was not a real original thinker. A lot of people around him were coming up with the ideas that ended up becoming what is Scientology. And Hubbard developed various pseudoscientific methods, which we can go into detail about, excuse me, that were claimed to treat drugs, from a detox program to, practical exercises and drills that you could do that would supposedly free up your mind, clear your head, and relieve the consequences, I guess you could say, the negative consequences of having taken drugs. All of these claims are not science-based. They all fall apart under critical inspection, but that doesn't stop them from making the claims, putting them out on websites, renaming all of these groups so they have nothing, there's no appearance of anything connected to Scientology. They call them New Life Centers, this kind of thing. And then promoting like crazy, and individual Scientologists would form up these Narconon centers, and all they needed was a sauna and some rooms for people to stay in, and they could basically get going, because there's no medical licenses or real oversight. For years that was the case, and now that some oversight has begun over the last decade or so, these centers are collapsing. They're falling apart.
There are Narconon centers all over the world.
Yeah.
And places like I saw a video from Australia where they don't have that sort of oversight. They can get around it. Here in America, it got a little better, but there are places everywhere, and they can do whatever the fuck they want. So
that's right. The thing that actually broke the dam as far as exposure is when people started dying. And that happened in Georgia. It happened in Oregon, or sorry, not Oregon,
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
3 in a month.
Yeah, actual dead bodies. I think there were 3 or 4 of them, and this was not good exposure for them, and caused the Oklahoma State oversight facilities to go into gear. Now, their oversight ended up becoming a bit of a joke. They were afraid of Scientology. They actually did not pursue, consequential reform of the facilities, but just the scare of it actually shrunk them enormously, and they lost a lot of ground that they had gained. And now they're very hands-offish about promoting Narconon and are not really doing a whole lot with it. Where for a number of years, Scientology really was investing in Narconon as a mainline front group for them. The other ones had sort of faded into obscurity a little bit that I had mentioned earlier. They're still there, but not nearly as pimped as Narconon was until the dead bodies started showing up. And those deaths were all preventable and were all very much a consequence of Hubbard's pseudoscience.
Yes.
So you mentioned, so looking back, there have actually been deaths relating to Narconon going right the way back to the 1980s. I think there was a couple of cases in France in the mid 80s, and then I just pull up my notes, and in Italy in the 90s, Italy again in the early 2000s, and Georgia in 2008, and Amanda's. So this isn't nothing new that people have died in this.
Exposing it is new, though.
Exposing it's been the problem, I guess.
Yeah.
I think a big thing that the reason the dam finally broke here is because I think it was like 6 years ago is when Oklahoma happened. It was 3 in a month. And that's when you have one or two. Yeah. The ones in Georgia and stuff, that they were spaced out. When you have 3 in a month, and one of them was a 20-year-old girl, a fucking kid. So
that's right. Yeah, it's bad, and like I said, it's a direct result of this. Now, let's be clear. Of course, I have to, put this out there that drug rehab is a dangerous business to get into. You're dealing with people who are often have criminal, history to pay for their stuff. You've got the full range of, some pretty wild mental behavior with this. I mean, drugs have some pretty drastic effects on people. So it's not like we all have this Pollyanna view that there aren't going to be some troubles, or you're not going to have some problems with individuals in doing this kind of thing. The problem with Narconon is that they take no responsibility for it, and they put no standard in place there. They don't have medical professionals on site. They don't, their oversight is a joke. Their ability to deal with actual medical issues just doesn't exist, because Scientology isn't about real medicine. It's about Hubbard pseudoscience. And if we start walking through the steps of the program, then you'll see what I'm talking about. But, it's not good stuff to be doing to people.
Well, and one of the things too is that the staff tend to be graduates of Narconon programs, sometimes directly out of the program. The kids or whoever's in the program that decide to, be a part of Scientology, and then they just graduated from this program and were drug addicts themselves, and they're the ones running this. No, training whatsoever. Absolutely no medical training, that's for sure.
Exactly my point. And worse, because they're so quickly turned around, because Narconon is so desperate to get people working there, that they'll use these people. I'm not saying that a drug addict shouldn't be employed after they get off drugs. Of course not, right? But to employ them in a position which requires, or certainly should be mandated to require, medical training, actual first aid training, actual drug training. No, they don't do any of that. All
mental
you need
health
is the training on L. Ron Hubbard stuff. It's a joke. And this also has resulted in employees of Narconon setting up drug pipelines in Narconons where they're not cured, they're not rehabilitated, they're still drug addicts, and they start becoming dealers for people on the Narconon program. And of course, we haven't even touched the sexual abuse that goes on. So this is a recipe for disaster. This is not a situation, this is not a subject where you want the, for the phrase, you don't want the inmates running the asylum. You need professionals, and that's not what Narconon provides. And they charge a lot of money for very, no return, really, very, very poor return.
Is it possible to when it comes to drug addiction and stuff like this, it has a big part in mental health. Can we talk for a second about Hubbard's relationship with psychiatry and psychology? Because the reason, if you don't know why Hubbard hates psychiatry so much, is because he actually put out ideas and theories, his crazy fucked up ideas and theories, and tried to pass them off in the psychiatry field, and they rejected them.
That's right.
And that was when, and tell me if I'm wrong, Chris, but that was when he decided, fuck you, psychiatry, we're having nothing to do with this.
Exactly.
You want to expand on that?
No, that's absolutely true. Hubbard wrote Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health in 1950, late 1949. And these ideas have been kicking around for, half a year or so. And he submitted them to the American Medical Association and the American Psychological Association, the APA and the AMA, and said, hey, I think I found the next big thing. And they both sent them back his studies, quote unquote, which were a joke, by the way, total joke. But they sent them back to him and said, not really impressed. There's no real case studies here. There's no double blind. There's no there's no nothing. There's no like effort at a scientific consensus here at all. You're just sending us a bunch of ideas and saying, this is the next big thing, run with it. And they went, nah, I don't think so. And he was pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, was he vindictive? This dude was like so egotistical. He could not deal with, and he actually talked about this in lectures that he gave. He would brag about how he would not put up with people criticizing his work. He would rip into them, tear them apart. Other writers, even of his pulp fiction, he was on a very hair trigger of do not criticize me. And he had a real vindictive personality, which he wrote into the policies or the DNA, if you will, of Scientology itself, which is why the church itself is so psychotic when dealing with enemies or critics. People who aren't even enemies, they just get a little critical and go, well, what about this? What about that? Destroy them utterly, So this is kind of what comes out of this group. It's pretty crazy. You wouldn't think that, people would get in this headspace, but I did, and people do. It's wacky.
I was going to ask you, as you brought this out shortly before we went on air, Chris. But apparently Hubbard himself had a massive double standard on drugs. I don't know if you want to get into that, because I actually do think that's kind of important, as Narconon is based on L. Ron Hubbard's techniques, and these are supposed to be the be-all, end-all of this is going to cure drug addicts. I think it might be actually worth looking into touching on that with Hubbard.
Yes. Hubbard, early on, Hubbard was putting together drug bombs of vitamins and supplements and amphetamines. He was recommending that these be used to supplement the effectiveness of Dianetics. This is all the way back in 1950. He started putting these ideas together. And it turns out Hubbard was an alcohol abuser and a drug abuser. And there are stories of firsthand accounts of people he associated with back in that time who watched him go on weeks-long benders. He went down to Cuba, wrote the whole second book of Dianetics apparently was written while he was on a complete, whiskey benders down in Cuba and pre-Castro Cuba. then he comes back to the States and, starts his third family. Dianetics had become Scientology. This grows. Hubbard is reportedly still on a lot of alcohol, maybe some drugs. By the 60s, he's talking about pinks and grays and various other drugs and alcohol use. It's all a little sketchy. It all depends on, who you're listening to, because there were a couple of people who were very close to him saying, no, I didn't see any drugs, but that doesn't mean there weren't any. And the indications from listening and watching him are that there was all kinds of narcotics flowing through his system. And then he had a couple strokes in the mid 70s and became either further mentally debilitated and more dependent on drugs. And then he had a personal physician who was a Scientologist who was sort of personally dealing with that. And then when he went into hiding in the 80s and finally died in 86, I think they came, there was no autopsy performed, but there was, they cremated his body real fast. They didn't want to have anybody looking at that. And I think Visceral and some other things were in his system at time of death. So he was on drugs pretty much his whole life in one form or another, and yet claimed the hypocrisy comes in when you read his works about drugs and you find him ranting and raving against any kind of drugs, medicines. They're not necessary. You're not even supposed to be taking aspirin when you're getting Scientology counseling. So there's a whole thing on it. So there's walking, there's the walk that he walked, and then there's the talk that he talked, and these are completely different things. And he actually put himself up. I want to be clear that this isn't just a couple passing comments about drugs are bad for you, don't do them. He set himself up internally within the church as a czar, an authority on drugs and how to get people off of them. And he developed all these techniques and guidelines for doing it, including the sauna detox program in the late 70s is when that came out. And all of that was put out as Hubbard's solutions to a drugged world, a drug crazy world, he called it. And of course, this doesn't even get into the claims that he made about past lives and how drugs that you took in past lives will also affect you now. So he really put a very comprehensive program together on drugs and drug use and what drugs do to you mentally. He has all kinds of claims about how drugs cause a reactivation of previous times of stress and trauma, and how by taking drugs, you're reactivating traumatic episodes that will impinge on you now and cause you to do crazy things. And this is one of the reasons why drugs are so damaging to people. He claimed this was a special insight he had that nobody else in the world is clued into yet, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty typical cult leader kind of tropes, but this is how it manifested in Scientology.
Well, I think just interesting. I think we want to really start looking at some of the processes. With
there's 4 steps, right, in the program.
Yeah. Now, one
more than 4 actually.
Yeah, one I definitely would like to talk to, and I don't know necessarily in which order these are, but there's definitely one I'd like to talk about first, and because I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that I believe all Scientologists do this at some point. And that's the purification rundown.
Correct.
Now, this is obviously based on this kind of theory that toxins and drugs and radioactive particles are stored in body fat, which I don't think any reputable toxicologist in the world endorses that. But I wondered if you could start to talk about what the process with this is. And I'll just print some out from Kylie. This is about Hubbard. Holy cow, the hypocrisy of this guy never fails to amaze me. Yes, pretty much. But yeah, the purification runs, because this is something you would have had to go through yourself as well. So
not only that, I was actually trained to oversee it, and I delivered it to other people, not through the Narconon program, but just through the regular Scientology channel. Okay, the very, very, very first step, and I'm going to probably skip a few because I was not a Narconon professional while I was in Scientology. I've interviewed people who were, and I am familiar with all the steps of the program, but I might mess up some sequences or something. But the very first step is is not the purif, it's actually a dry out period, and this is where you really should have the medical professionals on board to oversee this stuff, and they don't, and they just, it's just a total joke there. They dry you out. I guess it, depending on how much you've taken and how long you've been taking it. But I guess it's a couple days to a week or something, and then you start. Oh, so
can
sure.
I just mention that? Well, first of all, a lot of the drugs that people take, this process, the cold turkey process, is so fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
And what from what I've read, it's pretty much they give them vitamin supplements and throw them in a room.
Yes.
And they're just alone and dealing with this and the anguish that they must feel both in their body and in their mind. I can't imagine this. I don't understand why they don't have more people that just break within this process. So
well, they do. You just don't hear about it. I actually talked to guys who dealt with people through that process and people who worked at Narconons, and it's hell. There's no sugarcoating for that time period. It's rough. And it is a cold turkey process. You want one of the many reasons you want medical professionals around is because drugs produce physiological reactions that can be life-threatening, and you want, and coming down off of them, you can suffer some pretty rough circumstances. And if you don't have some medical professionals there, you might miscalculate what you're doing with the person, and they could be permanent consequences. Mm-hmm. This is also the time when you really need the most oversight for the person, because the chances of them, if they get any possibility of being able to escape or get back on, drugs, that's the time they're going to be most desperate to do it. This is also when suicide is a very, very, very real threat.
But there are actual medical issues that could happen. We're talking about seizures and blood pressure problems. I mean, drug withdrawal is not people who don't. People look at drug addicts and think, oh well, they just can't handle it. But it's not like that. What they go through in withdrawal, especially with a lot of the harder drugs, is fucking dangerous. And for them to just have no medical oversight whatsoever and chuck them in a room by themselves while they're going through this, it is unbelievably it's intolerable. It really is.
Yeah. Let's contextualize this. This isn't just, it's like addicts try to get themselves off and they'll go, lock themselves in a room or whatever. And maybe a friend is there, maybe not, or family or something. That's just people, trying to deal with a problem. This is supposed to be a structured, rigorous program that is going to help you get through this process, run by people who have really no idea what they're actually doing. And you're paying for this, like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I think the program's about $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. I've seen upwards of $50,000. Yeah. So you deserve the very best of care because you're literally paying for it, or your family is, or the insurance is. I mean, somebody's paying for this.
There's a lot of double billing too, where families have paid and then they went back and charged the insurance company as well. Just putting that out there. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, what, you mean there's insurance fraud? What?
No way.
I can't believe they didn't draw the line at insurance fraud.
I just share something from the chat here.
Yeah, there we go.
Just that he was in charge for a very short time at a Big Blue building in LA. No medical oversight at all.
Yeah. So, I have to, full disclosure, I have to apologize. I have to admit that I oversaw this purification program, which I'll talk about here in a second, myself in Santa Barbara, California, when I was a staff member there. And then as a management person, I was overseeing it across all of the United States. And I was pushing hard for people to get onto and through this detox program because I thought it was real. I thought it was true. And I thought it was medically backed up. As a Scientologist, I was told all of those things and I read them. I read papers by people with MD after their name saying this was legit stuff. So I believed them. And it was only after I came out and actually went to a seminar put on by a toxicologist about the purification program that I realized how in the black I had been about that. So I just need to say all that right now because I did that to people and I'm horribly ashamed of it. That being said, now I can tell.
Chris?
Okay, I thought that was me.
Oh, if we lost Chris.
We lost Chris.
There
you go.
No, you froze for a moment.
Sorry.
I usually meet.
Okay,
not again.
Yeah, I was just getting a little circle of death there.
Who did it?
So purification program is a sauna detox, and yes, that does not make sense now.
The first is the screaming at each other thing. That's the second.
We'll get to that.
So
the screaming is the next step.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The Purif is actually quite a rigorous program. The purification program or purification rundown is the very first major step on the Scientology Bridge to Total Freedom, the series of indoctrination steps that make you a Scientologist, is also the first major step of the Narconon programs. The same process. You go into you do an exercise warm-up period for about half an hour. You take mega doses of vitamins. They are gradually increased day by day to keep up with to keep a balance of these supplements in with the increasing amounts of niacin that you are taking. And niacin is a vitamin that you can take, a vitamin supplement that causes the blood capillaries to open up real big and you get real red. You get these flushes. And Hubbard claimed that those flushes were radiation running out, processing out of your body. Your body was somehow storing this radiation, sunlight, this kind of thing, and it kicks it back out because of the niacin. That's the active ingredient. And the other vitamins are taken to keep your body balance going. This is all, none of this has a scientific basis, but this is all Hubbard's invention. So
in fact, people think that the vitamins, are perfectly fine to take, but in large dosages and for an extended amount of time, they are toxic, especially certain ones after 2 weeks or a month. They build up in your organs and they will cause organ failure. People think you get this shit over the counter, you can eat your vitamins, it's fine. But when you have them in these dosages, and you take them at these high rates for a long amount of time, they will fucking kill you. So
yeah, and we're talking about at the end, you got to get up on the program to a dosage level of 5,000 milligrams, 5 grams of niacin a day. Plus, you're literally holding a handful of vitamins and supplements. I used to distribute these things. I'm telling you, it's a lot. And it gradually builds up to that. You're not starting at 5. You're starting at 100 milligrams of niacin, and you move up from there. But there was a whole review they did, I guess about 7 years ago now, 7 or 8 years ago. Miscavige did this whole review of the purification program and made everybody do it again because they hadn't done it right the first time according to his standards, meaning you have to get up to 5 grams before you can graduate. You're not done with the Purif until you get to that level. When I did the purification program, I was 17 years old. I had never done drugs. This was back in Santa Barbara. I'd gotten drunk like once. I'd had one surgery to have my tonsils taken out, and that was it. So I was on the program for about a week, and I was done. I got up to 400 milligrams of niacin or something. I'm not these huge mega amounts. And and I was done. I said I'm done, and I was done, and that was that. Now they tell you, no, you're not done. You got to keep going, because until you get to the 5 grams, and I would have been on that pure for another 3 weeks. And this is let me just finish describing the program, and it's real simple. You get these dosages of vitamins. You warm up for about half an hour doing running on a treadmill or running around the block, and then you spend another 4.5 hours, ideally, according to the tenets of the program, in the sauna with as few breaks as possible. You don't want to be taking breaks. You are sort of made aware. There's sort of the idea that heat exhaustion is a thing. I made a whole video about this because the symptoms of heat exhaustion, tiredness, deadness, the change in body physiology, Scientologists think all those symptoms are indications that drugs are running out of your system, or past surgeries are running out of your system, or past moments of unconsciousness or drug trips that you had are quote unquote running out of your body. You're detoxifying, and you're re-experiencing the drug or the what's it called when they put you under in surgery?
Anesthetic.
Yeah, the anesthetics, those are running out. Like all this, like if you believe Hubbard, all this stuff is still stored in your fatty tissues, and the heat of the sauna is what causes you to sweat this out. It comes out through your sweat, and you're supposed to sweat, ginormously while you're on this program, which is why you're in the sauna for 4.5, preferably 4.5 straight hours, with as few breaks again as possible. So you can see automatically, just from what I've said, that the very dangers of this, that people are pushing themselves too hard to stay in the sauna for too long. Yes, heat exhaustion and heat stroke are things that happen on this program, and the symptoms of heat exhaustion and heat stroke are then mistaken for a positive experience. That's something you want to have happening to you. So you can see automatically the threat here, how people can get into real physical problems doing this program. It's not some mental masturbation of sitting there thinking about, you blowing up planets 20 million years ago. This is really hitting your body hard. And
you're talking about bodies that have almost rebooted in a sense, because they have gone, when you go through, drug withdrawal, it does so much shit to your body, and it breaks you down, and you have nothing left inside of you. And then they expect you to do exercises while you're trying to build yourself back up again and sweat everything out. Well, and when you're sweating everything out, you're pulling all the salts and stuff out of your body, all the electrolytes that are keeping you alive. And that's why people die from this. It is so dangerous. It's gross.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, I can laugh about it only ironically. I'm not laughing because I think this is funny,
totally.
But it's a thing, and people have suffered greatly off this. I mean, I can only wonder, now that I've learned all about this coming out of Scientology and seeing the actual science, I can only wonder how many lives have been shortened by people doing this purif that no one even has any indication of yet. How many years got taken off of people's lives because they put themselves through a physically debilitating, damaging program under the guise of making themselves better and getting rid of the toxins in their body. Mm-hmm. It's horrible. It's really, there's an unknown amount of damage that this thing has caused. We know there have been deaths. There was a guy who had a heart failure in Sacramento in the late 90s who died, who was in the middle of this program. He didn't die in the sauna, he died at home. So Scientology skated out of any blame on that one. And in fact, while I was in management overseeing the delivery of this program all over the Western United States, this report came in from Sacramento, and I tried to get an investigation done, and it was all curtailed. It was all cut off. I was cut off at the knees, anything in writing about that incident was destroyed, shredded, deleted, erased. Anything having to do with anything with Scientology being connected to that man dying was completely obliterated. So there was no evidence. And I can't even go back and tell you what the guy's name was. I don't even remember. And I was not allowed to do any investigation of that. So it's not like they're real keen on being responsible for people, within the church. They'll cut and run the second there's any problem and claim no responsibility for it. So that was a little bit of an eye-opening moment for me when I was in the church. That was telling to me. But I obviously didn't get out for many more years. But that's demonstrative of how Scientology deals with problems.
I was going to say as well that when you talk about like the fact that they redid the whole program, it's worth noting that people are paying for this as well, especially if you've gone through this once to get already. I mean, this is part of this, because this is something that I understand Miss Scavage has done a couple of times now, where he's got whether it be Hubbard's books or whatever, they've been re-edited, or they found new material, which was a few. And everyone is expected to repurchase all of them. And like even with things like you're doing that people are doing that purification rundown again, putting themselves through that. They're paying for the privilege of this as well.
That's right.
I think that's worth noting.
I think it's about a $5,000 program within the church.
Yeah. It's a disgusting scam. It really is.
Oh yeah. I've known people who've done it 4 times. Like professional painters, people who are exposed routinely to chemicals and stuff, who are Scientologists, believe that by every couple of years going and doing a new purification program, they are ridding their body of paint fumes and toxins and leads and chemicals and stuff. And when you find out the actual science on this, I almost cried. I just couldn't believe how wrong everything Hubbard said about detoxification was. I mean, sweat alone is the least efficient way of getting rid of this stuff if you do have a toxification program or problem. And that does happen. People can get toxins lodged in their body. I'm not saying that never happens, but it doesn't happen the way Hubbard talks about it. It doesn't happen with LSD, as Hubbard claimed. LSD is water soluble. It goes right through your system.
He thinks that LSD gets stored in I think it's the body fat, like forever.
Yeah. Alcohol, LSD, cocaine, any drugs you've taken, pot, right? And we know this is just not true. Now, he made these claims. Get this. He made these claims based on the advice of an Italian mortician that he had one conversation with. Back in the day, it was Italian or Greek mortician. Hubbard was sailing around on the Mediterranean, the ocean blue, having conversations with people. And he has some rando conversation with the guy and decides that he now has this scientific insight that, that's what's happening, because of this one conversation. And then he ran with it. And there was never any scientific validation or, hey, let's check with some people. And this was all in the late 70s that he develops this program. And he only consulted with Scientologists, if at all, as far as Scientology doctors go, who were, oh, yes, absolutely. That sounds great. Clearly, just because you have MD after your name doesn't mean that you understand toxicology or how to detox a body, and that was the advice Hubbard leaned on and ran with. So there you go.
And even if they were doctors, which the Scientology doctors, which they weren't, they weren't trained specifically in this area. You need for drug rehabilitation, you need drug training and you need mental health training, and you need it encompasses a large amount of things. But I think personally, I think the mental health thing is super important, and they completely gloss over that. It is nothing. It is.
Well, they gloss over it because they've got Scientology.
Oh yeah.
Scientology is the solution.
I want to ask you kind of a theoretical question. I don't know. Sure. It may be but it's obviously Narconon is obviously a money scam of sorts. But do you think it's a funnel to get more people into Scientology for more money, or are they just worried about grabbing the small. Yeah. Okay. Just wondering.
They're front groups. When I mentioned front groups earlier, that's what I meant. These are all groups that are acting as conduits to the main line, which is the Church of Scientology itself. That's where the big bucks are. And so that's what the purpose of all of these front groups are. And Narconon was the most successful of these until people started dying.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just worth. I was going to go in a sort of direction in a second, Chris, because I think it's worth revisiting something we discussed in the last time you were on my channel, and I think that's maybe because we did touch a little bit on Narconon, and that is about spotting pseudoscientific claims like the things in Narconon. I did pull something out, so I was going to share. I believe, where is it? I'll put this full screen for a second. This is Narconon UK, and I mean, we used to start reading some of it. It just you just sort of saying about I mean, one of the, you just start looking at some of the claims in some of the and
well, go up to the top there. Go back up there. There's a telling line in what you were just skimming through there. I'd like
about Narconon.
Yeah, there's our goal. Let's see here, our success. Go back up.
Oh, Narconon Global Mission.
Oh yeah, was this the same page we were just on a moment ago?
I think so. I think it was about Narconon. So.
Okay, let me see if I can find that line again.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of different websites for Narconon around, even just in the UK. So it's.
Oh sure. Let's see what we got here.
I think I know.
The previous page. The point was that our success is measured by the number of people who are moving on to have successful lives, something like that. And there we go.
This is it.
Program is unique. Our success is measured in our ever-growing number of graduates who now lead new lives free from drugs. Well, the only reason why they have to rely on anecdotes is because they have no scientific measure of drug concentration in a person's body before and after a Narconon program to fall back on. And if Hubbard's theories were true, you'd be able to measure that. And there is no measurement of it because his theories are not true. So they have to rely right on their website on, flowery phrasing and anecdotal evidence to show you that they have anything worth paying for. They will not show you actual science backing up what they're doing with, like, let's say a person had, I don't know, 0.03 body density of drug toxins, and then they did the program and now it's 0.01 or something. I mean, you'd think there would be some measurable quantification of this. And yet what does science deal with? Measurable statistical values and information you can actually get your sink your teeth into, not success stories. And that's all Narconon has to fall back on.
This is what I see a lot of glowing like testimonials on there, but people who, and some of them I'm even a bit skeptical about how authentic they might be. But this is what you see, just nothing but sort of glowing testimonials. So that page I was just showing you was saying why Narconon works. What it doesn't actually seem to provide is any sort of actual measurable, like you were saying, measurable data or anywhere I could find on that site that backs up the claims.
Precisely my point. And you won't find it anywhere because they don't have that data. All they have is Hubbard's anecdotes and success stories, and that's it. That's the efficacy of the program. Just because you feel good, this is something I had to learn the hard way. Just because something makes you feel good doesn't mean it's good for you. I love Twinkies. They make my mouth feel great, but they're not good for me. And this program is, can make people have spurts of energy. You're in a sauna, you're sweating stuff out, you're exercising every day, which is generally something different for people. I mean, a lot of people have memberships, but they're not going. So you go to you know, these to this program, and I used to watch people do it, you know, because I oversaw it, and people would generally start feeling a little better from the exercise and stuff. I did, and so they feel better. But you know, check back with the drug addicts in a month or 2 or 3. All that's gone. All that euphoria is gone. All the, you know, all the neurotoxins or neurotransmitters are, they've run their course, and the guy's right back in the pit.
Wow. And the thing is that for the very few people that do get through the program and decide, you know, that they'll stay off the drugs, they feel like they owe something to these people. They owe something to Scientology.
Good point.
And they feel like they have saved their lives, and this is now God to them, pretty much, because they've revolutionized who they are. And right. I think that is how they funnel people into your ex organization, I was going to say, but it sounded wrong in my head as I was saying it. So, sorry, the organization.
No, that's how you set up a conversion event, and it happens, you know, not just in Scientology. I'm, you know, just think about, if you control the milieu, if you control the environment, and you control the framing with which the information is being given to somebody, then they will understand what's happening to them only in the context that you've provided. Yeah. And so, oh, I feel great. Well, it's not just because you exercised a little bit, got your blood going for the first time in 3 years. It's must be because you've been detoxed of all of these drugs. And you can say anything. It must be because Christ came. It must be because, you know, the Book of Mormon is true. I mean, you could throw anything at somebody as far as how you frame this stuff. And if they don't critically think about what's happening to them, then they'll buy it. And because it's a convenient, easy to understand framing. And then then they feel like they've had something happen to them, which did not happen to them. Their drugs, the drugs were not detoxified out of their body. Scientology did not save their life, but they've been convinced that it did. And so they feel this sense of obligation, and then they have to go work for these groups, and they get paid pennies, by the way. It's not like
I was going to say, plus they're usually broke as fuck after they've done these programs, because it's expensive. And I've read, you know, I know it's around like $30,000, but what they will do if people can't come up with it, they'll say whatever you can. So they're literally taking all of the not just their money. Most of the time, the drug addicts don't have the money. It's their families that are paying for it. So their families are giving up everything, are mortgaging their houses, because they're trying to save their family members' lives. And so afterwards, they have nothing. And here's an organization that says, not only did we save your life, but we're gonna, you know, have you work for us. Come on over. It's totally fun. It really is.
A question I'd maybe like to get your opinion on, Chris. I mean, how many people do you think Narconon actually recruits into Scientology? Because I mean, I think generally, Scientology's numbers have been falling for quite some time. I mean, is this really? I mean, is it successful in recruiting people, or is that not really the goal anymore?
Yes, it is successful in recruiting people. That is still the goal. They don't have any other reason to be doing Narconons than to get people into Scientology. It's not because they're, you know, they tell themselves that individual Scientologists tell themselves that, and sell themselves on the idea that they're ridding the world of drugs and toxins and the drug plague. And there's a mountain of false information in Scientology right out of the old DARE programs, and even earlier from Hubbard's nonsense, about how damaging drugs and toxins and stuff actually are. Scientologists are terrified of that stuff. That's why I never touched drugs my whole life until I got here to Colorado, out of Scientology. It took me years, even coming out of Scientology. Some people come out of Scientology, especially young ones, and they just crash. They go into the party zone, and they just, like, all the things that were forbidden, they now want to do. You know, we saw a lot of this. Anyway, there's a lot of false information about this in the program. So when people graduate the program, they are usually eager for more. They want to learn more about Hubbard and Scientology. And the people who run Narconons are uniformly Scientologists. And they can't wait to get Scientology to these people because they think Scientology is the ultimate spiritual rehabilitation program. And that's what these people really need. They really need Scientology. This is just a Band-Aid. The Narconon program is just a Band-Aid to get them onto the mainline bridge to total freedom, which is what's going to save their eternal soul. So that's how Scientologists look at it.
And I guess so I've got maybe sort of one more question I want to address sort of towards the end, but I just going to ask Amanda, do you have any other more questions about this you'd like to ask Chris first? Or?
I have a million more, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean within reason, obviously, but yeah. But
well, let's talk a little bit about some of the steps you do after this purif, because that's only the first step.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a little hard to explain exactly because it is pure Scientology, but you end up, and again, my sequencing might be a little off on this, but there are there's the purification program, and then you have TRs, the training routines, and this is where you're sitting down across from each other, staring at each other, and then you start yelling at each other and trying to throw each other off.
I do not understand. Like, I read what I could about that. That was one of the few things I knew a bit about this beforehand, but I did want to read into the steps, and that I did not understand whatsoever. Do you have any idea what it is, what they do, the yelling thing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've done hours of it.
just screaming at each other in their face. Just there's nothing specific to it. It's just getting it out.
No, not at all. What it is it's a very controlled exercise. These are a series of drills that are designed to improve people's ability to communicate and control things. And I think it's not just a trope to say that drug addicts, might have some communication failures and might have a little bit of an inability to control their environment. So the idea is that these drills will give them back the ability to communicate effectively, somewhat, and get them out of their head a little bit and get them able to control things. And these drills, used in moderation, do have a little bit of a positive effect on people in that regard. Scientology being a destructive cult, now Ron Hubbard being the guy that he was, they dial it up to 11 and make it extreme and make it crazy and make it impossible to actually do anything but have a torturous time doing these exercises. The drills are designed to get you comfortable sitting in a chair, just talking to somebody, or first off, just looking at them. It's the theory is it's a little hard to have a conversation with somebody if you can't even look at them. A little bit of truth to that. So you do this drill where you sit there and you chill, you relax, sitting across from somebody, looking at them in the eyes. Now, again, not particularly a bad thing to do for about 10 minutes. You do it longer than that, you're going into trance induction. Not particularly a good idea. You do it for hours, you can get people into some pretty crazy places mentally. Yeah. And I've done those drills for hours and hours and hours. I've spent a whole, days doing them. So you go into some pretty crazy places. And this is not something I would advise for drug addicts or recovering drug addicts. But this is what Scientology puts there is we're going to do these drills. And so you sit there and look at somebody for a long period of time. First, actually, the very, very, very first drill is just sitting in a chair with your eyes closed for a long period of time. Then you open your eyes and you're looking at the person across from you. Sitting silently, not saying anything, not doing anything, not making any motions, just getting comfortable sitting there. The next
step, in your head then. Somebody
like
for all this, just sitting there in their head. That's
just like this.
No, sorry.
Yeah. Hours and hours. Okay. So then you do that. And you're not supposed to be blinking a lot or fidgeting or moving around or nervous laughter. All of that's none of that. You got to just sit still. It's quite an exercise. It's quite something watching people struggle with this. Then the bull bait starts. Bull baiting. This is an old expression. It's baiting bulls, right? It's like it comes from that. It's where you try to push the other person's buttons. One person is sitting there and they're just supposed to sit. The person who's actually doing the drill is supposed to just sit there and look at you and confront you, while the coach, the person who's doing the bull baiting, will try to throw the person off. And that can be anything from snapping in their face, you know, snapping fingers in their face, you know, like this far apart from the person's face. They're like, whoa, you know, you got to get used to that. You can't touch the person. You're not supposed, you might push them a little bit, but you're not supposed to beat on them or slap them or nothing like that. Nobody's doing that. But they are trying to throw the person off from confronting. And this could include telling jokes. This can include insulting the person. And I mean deeply insulting the person. You can say anything you want to the person who's doing the drill. And it's supposed to be a gradual thing. You're not supposed to lead with, you know, Robin Williams bits. You're supposed to gradually build the person up, because if you just give them a bunch of failures, they're just going to give up and walk out and never come back. So you build it gradually. You start with, hey, dude, you look like an idiot, right? And you start, you know, just mild insults, and then you move up from there. There's no set pattern to it. You can do and say anything. It's really up to the creativity of the coach doing it. And this can go on again for hours. In the end, the result of this is basically what I understood while I was in Scientology is that this would be a place I would get to by doing this drill where my buttons would all be flattened, where I wouldn't be crack upable, where I wouldn't be able to be bothered by things people are telling me or saying to me. What actually ends up happening is you end up in a very disassociated state.
Yeah, that's fucking dangerous too.
People say funny shit to you all the time, and there's nothing wrong with laughing at it. People say insulting things to you, and there's nothing wrong with going, hey man, that ain't cool. You know, like there's nothing wrong with having appropriate responses to communication. But in Scientology, you're supposed to just be able to stand there and confront it. And you learn this skill, which is not a skill. It's actually a kind of a disturbed mental state of disassociation, where you just sort of remove yourself from the entire situation. And it's kind of this weird artificial objectivity. I don't really know how else to describe it. I'm probably not using the right words because I haven't done like deep psychological dives on this, but that's the best way I can describe it. Is you start going through life living sort of separate from yourself. It creates a very, very strange headspace. And that's the best way I can describe the damaging aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's just the first series of drills. There's a whole series of these, about 9 of them that you do, that they put drug addicts through, or, you know, drug rehab patients through. And the idea is that this is supposed to solve the reasons why you got on drugs in the first place, because clearly you only turned to drugs to solve some problem in your life, because your life would have been fine without the drugs. So clearly you're using the drugs as a crutch or a tool of some kind to solve a problem. So the whole effort of the Narconon program is to put you in a position where you can confront and deal with your life on its own terms, and you don't have to run and hide or use drugs as a crutch or a solution to that problem. That's
so it never occurred
supposed to be doing.
It never occurred to them that maybe addressing those issues would be important. They just have to deal with them themselves, whatever issues it is that brought them to drugs in the first place.
I mean, this is very
into that. There are some other steps you do after this where you start diving into some of your past misdeeds and wrongdoings, and you write them down to take responsibility for them. There are steps where you are put through courses, children's level courses in the Scientology world on grammar and communication and learning how to learn and stuff like this. So the whole program thoroughly indoctrinates you on all the basics of how L. Ron Hubbard thinks. You know, these are the tools you need to get through your life. And it's one size fits all program. It's not a tailored program for each person running through it. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I get to say that now is to highlight this is not an individual program where we're going to deal with you individually. It's a factory production line of steps that Scientologists are convinced apply equally to every single person who's ever had a problem with drugs. And that's just not, that's just patently false. I mean, there's just no way that's true. But when I was a Scientologist and you believe that L. Ron Hubbard's figured out the basics of life itself, then you fall for this idea that one size fits all will really work. And of course it doesn't.
Wow. There's a question, I guess I'm going to have to ask you this because I did put her name in the stream. Recent comments by Whoopi Goldberg. Now,
yeah,
I guess I want to try and be charitable to her as much as possible. But recently on the
Why
show,
did she mentioned AA and then she said Narconon, and like I said, I don't like AA or NA. I don't, but Narconon is absolutely worse. Why didn't she just say AA and NA? Does she have some kind of connection?
Well, I mean, I'm hoping that she meant NA and said Narconon by mistake. We can't rule that possibility out. But
Tony threw that out there as a possibility, didn't he?
I believe Tony Ortega did. I mean, I read about this on his blog, but let's say, Chris, you hear someone in a public position like that. Now, okay, I know Kirstie Alley's spouted for Narconon for years. I'd expect that from her. She's obviously, she is absolutely indoctrinated Scientologist. She's dyed the wall. Yeah.
She claimed that the Narconon program saved her life twice.
Yeah.
And that's why she's so adamant about it. She was a cokehead and
super
and she did
cokehead. Like super cokehead though. For real.
She got in and she went down deep. And then she reverted. And that's the funny thing is she's the Narconon. She was the celebrity Narconon spokesman for many years, touting that she had done the Narconon program twice. And you go, twice?
Should have worked the first time.
You only need it once.
Yeah. So,
yeah. But
and if I've got some factual error there, fine. But I while a Scientologist, she literally did say the words, "The Narconon program saved my life twice." So you go, you know, I just wasn't thinking critically at the time because I was a Scientologist.
You keep saying that, which is funny because it's kind of my tagline at the end of my stuff. I love that because it's true, and that's why I say it because you have. I'm a scientist. You have people of science-based background or people that think that way, and you have religion, and they don't want you to think critically ever, and that's why I say it. So,
well, I'll tell you, something I hit on recently that I'd like to share with everybody because I think I hit on something important and true is that the thing about extremism or extreme belief or fundamentalism belief or something, however you want to describe that, is that it shuts down your ability to think critically on that subject. I think that's a good definition for extremism is you're an extremist when you're looking at somebody who's unable to think critically on that topic. And it also answers how they can still think critically on other topics. They can still be, scientists, or they can still be this, or they can still be that. And you go, but how? Well, because on that one subject, they have gone all in. And that is, you can maybe analogize it or think of it as like that section of their brain, even though it doesn't really work like that. But like, some part of their thinking process is just, they put it in a safe. They don't have to think about it anymore. And so they don't. There's no thinking involved there. It's just dogma. It's just black and white, and that's where we've gone with that. I was there. Other people have gone there with religion and stuff. So,
yeah, I was going to say. I mean, what I was going to get to with the whole thing with like Whoopi Goldberg, Kirstie Alley, whoever it may be. I mean, when you hear like someone in the public eye like that, promoting even if it may have been accidental on Whoopi Goldberg's part, I don't know. I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. But how damaging is that, though? Your opinion, when you hear people, because people will listen to celebrities.
Which is why they spend so much money on like the Celebrity Center and getting their celebrity.
Yeah,
that's right. It's very damaging. Celebrity endorsements matter, obviously. They are paid for a reason. It's sad to me that it's true that celebrity endorsements matter. It even takes me some effort though, and and I like live and breathe this stuff to, just because Harrison Ford said it doesn't mean it's true, just because blah blah says it, it's tough. It's tough because we have, it's built into us that we need and want authority figures. And we want people to tell us what to do because we don't really have the ability to think deeply about every single decision we're going to make. So we want recommendations. But for me, to answer your question directly, it pisses me off when I see celebrities endorse stuff that is plain pseudoscience and easily discoverable pseudoscience or easily discoverable nonsense. This is what pisses me off to no end about Gwyneth Paltrow, who's not only endorsing it, but actually running it. People like Whoopi, my response to that is, you're a lazy cow. Like, how could you not look this up first in this age of Google? How can you possibly? There is no excuse. In the 80s, even, there were excuses. Pre-internet, there were excuses. There isn't any now. The knowledge is all there at your fingertips. It's 5 seconds away. I did a 30-minute video breaking down the problems with the purification program. Anybody can watch that. It comes up in Google searches. Anybody can find out about how bad Narconon is simply by Googling it. It will come up immediately. It's all first page stuff. So what it tells me is that these celebrities are too lazy to do their due diligence. I, as a content creator, will not promote things that are ridiculous, and I do my due diligence so that I won't do that. So why can't they?
Jeff, like, if she did misspeak, why didn't she fix it and say, no, I meant NA?
She needs, and I will say that she needs to, if that's what she meant, she needs to come out publicly and say, no, I meant NA, I did not mean Narconon.
I used to watch The View, a single mom back in the day, had nothing to do at 10 o'clock in the morning, so I would, and she would own up to shit like this if she did it. Honestly, if it was an accident, she would have come on the next day and said, I misspoke, I meant NA. I have an issue with Narconon because it's connected to Scientology, and this is what she said. This on the 2nd, I think. And it's the 9th, and she hasn't. No, I honestly, part of me wants to believe it was she misspoke, but I really don't think she did. I don't.
No. And let's be okay. As far as benefits of the doubt go, okay, here it is. Narconon has very slick promotional material, and the Church of Scientology is unusually good at insinuating itself into people's lives or getting connections with people through other people. Their celebrity network is a real thing. Tom Cruise is a real guy, right? Kirstie Alley is pretty toxic, and then most people know that, but not Tom Cruise, not John Travolta, not Elizabeth Moss. I mean, these are some, not, oh God.
I was so surprised when I found out that she's a Scientologist. Like,
Michael
surprised.
He's a Scientologist. These are all good, fairly decent people. Tom Cruise isn't. I mean, Tom Cruise is a scumbag, but he's got, this brilliant PR. So when they come along and are pitching this or favorably talking about this stuff to other celebrities, I mean, Simon Pegg thinks Tom Cruise is a great guy. He has him totally fooled. They've done movies together.
Simon Pegg for me. Don't do it, dude.
Yeah, he thinks he has some idea of what he's talking about. He has no clue what Tom Cruise gets up to, behind closed doors. Tom Cruise's stage manners are so good, that he can, even in interpersonal relations where the camera's off and people think he's being the real Tom Cruise. No, that's not the real Tom Cruise either. The real Tom Cruise is a narcissistic scumbag.
I don't know. From what I see, in his interviews and I've also seen him speak at Scientology, like conventions, not conventions, but you know what I mean. Like when you guys have yeah, I see someone who is just fucking very narcissistic, but also off his rocker, doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. So
Correct.
I see it, but I also see that he can project something that people can love, and I can't even watch his movies anymore because it's just so gross to me.
No, I haven't been able to watch the Cruise movie in years.
Yeah, I mean, I
can't
did.
stand the guy. But okay, but sorry, we're
Yeah.
sorry. I go on my Tom Cruise rants and I'm horrible. Yeah. Whoopi Goldberg does deserve some benefit of the doubt, but like you said, you know, she hasn't come out and taken it back. So at this point, fuck Whoopi Goldberg. Yeah. You know, if she can't take the time to do her due diligence and actually, you know, back up what she's going to endorse, then her word is useless. It's valueless. And
she should have just said, seek help.
Right.
That would have been fine.
Specific organizations, that was, and especially if you don't know anything about it. Like I said, you know, I'm not going to talk about it, but AA and NA have plenty of issues of their own. But you know, there are hospitals, there are clinics, there are so many better things for people to go to get help with than these bullshit find your God fucking programs that don't help and ruin people's lives.
That's right. That's right. This is a difficult topic at best. You know, we are so far from actually getting and understanding all the mechanisms of drugs, what drugs do to you, how to get people safely off of drugs, how to deal with the traumatic long-term and short-term effects of drug use, prolonged drug use. You know, there is no program that's got this all nailed. There isn't one. There's no gold standard out there of this is how you do it. Everybody's trying to figure out what the hell they're doing in the face of, you know, incomplete science and you know, poorly run studies and a lot of vested interest in making money versus helping people. So there's a lot of problems with this entire industry.
Oh yeah.
Narconon's the worst of the lot because it mixes Scientology with this problematic field, you know. And I'm not trying to say nobody's doing good work out there. That's not my point. There's lots of good work and well-intentioned people trying to do that good work. It's just that we're still in the infancy of figuring it out.
Oh yeah.
So, you know,
and admit to that. Admit that we're working on it. Exactly. Don't say you have the solution and it is the only one. That is completely irresponsible.
That's right. I mean, I saw some rehab program when I was researching this stuff where a guy basically is running a horse ranch, and people come out, ride the horses.
Yeah, I've seen places like that too.
Yeah. Like, okay, nice idea. I wouldn't mind going and riding some horses, and if I don't smoke any pot while I'm there, great. But you know, to call that drug rehab, I mean, come on, you know.
Yeah.
Break.
So. Okay. I think I said in closing, Chris, is there anything you really want to say to people? If there's something you want them to take away about Narconon, what would that be? What would be your closing thoughts on Narconon? I like man's closing thoughts.
That's how I feel about Narconon. Sorry.
Yeah. Ex-Scientologist has been putting some good comments down here too. This person definitely has some understanding of this.
Yeah.
I actually don't know exactly where that court case stands right now. As far as I know, it's still ongoing. I don't think it's been resolved. I think Tony would definitely report on that if that had been come to some kind of resolution one way or the other. He's been following it very closely, as has Jeffrey Augustine. So I follow their reporting just as, you know, so all I can do is refer to them on that one. Yeah. As far as closing on this, I will highly recommend, if anybody's really wants to do a deep dive on this, and I mean deep, find or Google Lucas Catton, C-A-T-T-A-N, I think, maybe O-N, C-A-T-T-O-N, Lucas Catton. He ran Narconon, and he came out. He left Scientology, he left the whole thing, and he was actually in charge of the Narconon in Oregon. he and I did a very long form interview that unfortunately was the third interview I lost when my computer crashed. We're going to do it again probably in a few weeks. But he's written 2 books on this topic, and he is the guy who's going to know every detail about this thing. And I learned a lot from him, and I can't recommend his work enough. So throw that out there. Otherwise, just stay the hell away from Narconon, please. You know,
Yeah.
in general
Real
terms.
help. Get real help.
Yeah,
Get
real help. There are more effective programs out there. There are way more honest programs. You know, there are certified programs. There are programs that actually want and appreciate oversight and work toward, you know, putting something there that is as scientifically valid as it can be, and who have medical professionals on site 24/7. They comply with the directions and orders that they get because it's the right thing to do. You know, they're not trying to slime out of every little bit of oversight because they're so sure they have all the right answers. And that's Scientology in a nutshell. So that's why you got to stay away from that stuff. It's not that they don't ever help anybody. It's not that nobody's ever, you know, there have been people who've gone through this program and claim that it helped them. And I'm not going to tell them it didn't. I'm talking, my criticism is not anecdotal on 1 or 2 cases of people being helped or harmed. It's the bigger picture of the pseudoscience of it, and the fact that it's not based on any factual information. So anybody who's helped by it pretty much is an accident. You know, that's my last words.
It's like that. You know, there are always going to be people that really want to get help and really want to get out of it, and we're going to do, you know, it was going to happen anyway, regardless of where they went. And then they see it as, well, these people did it for me. No, you did it for you. You wanted it. You fixed it yourself.
That's right. That's right.
And I'd like to, you mentioned someone who, that you're the head of the person that was, I don't know if she's still the head now. She might've been shuffled out, but she was 6 years ago when this shit with Georgia went down, or Oklahoma, I think. The medical professional that was running Narconon is a naturopath that supports anti-vaxxers. So that tells you how, you know, realistic this program is.
No, Scientology, you got to watch the credentials closely with Scientology, because they'll use chiropractors to back up their stuff. I mean, they'll use anybody who's got some initials after their name and has any possibility of being, you know, taken seriously, rather than actually going to the real professionals.
Yeah. Well, cool. At least Kent Hovins, you know, had the nerve to at least just go to get a fake doctorate from a fake school, but you know, but
that guy too.
Yes, absolutely. Chris, is there anything you want to plug coming up on your channel? That you would like to plug right now?
Let's see. Been putting up some extra content lately. I just posted a video yesterday, pretty long talk with John about personality and stuff. Otherwise, I am going to be doing a call-in show. I'm setting it up right now. Not sure yet about formatting and how all that stuff's going to go. It's just a little gem of an idea right now, but I'm really excited about it. So I polled my viewers, and they seem to overwhelmingly like the idea. I got about an 80% return on, yes, please do this. So that'll be fun. And I think that'll involve Mel, my wife, a little bit more in all of this too. So that'll be kind of fun. So people like seeing her.
I'll just say links to Chris's website and his channel are in the description.
Yep. Oh God. And I'm horrible at this. Please read my book.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to Chris's website, and I will recommend this because I've been for Chris's book, Scientology A to Z New. It's really, if you really want to dive into what Scientology is, it is really worth it. Momma Atheist, Amanda, thanks for coming on and co-hosting today. You've got some stuff coming up, I believe. Would you like to plug yourself? By the way, links to her channel is in the description. If you're not subscribed to Amanda, you need to be. Okay. So
I hate fucking shilling. So
Get used to it.
Get used to it. You're going to be doing it a lot
I'm horrible
more.
at it. I am so horrible at it.
Well, you know what I want to say is I've been looking at your shirt, Chris, this whole time. Okay, first of all, and everybody who's seen me knows, but I'll show you these. They're my TIE Fighter earrings. So, and this weekend, my TV time, we're doing The Mandalorian. So I'm excited about that. I'm doing that with Mr. Bear and my son, because my son is a huge fucking Star. Like, we are Star Wars family. We just are. So we're doing that. And then on Sunday, I'm on Aaron Ra's channel at 7 Eastern time here. So
cool.
Yeah. So if you're not, as I said, if you're not subbed to Amanda, please give her a sub. She's going to be a star on the YouTube. She just doesn't know it yet. Okay. Well, guys, once again, thanks for joining me. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Chris. I think we've had a real good dive into what Narconon is and the dangers of Narconon. And I would close by just saying, you know, anyone who's has an issue, or if you know someone that has got a drug issue, tell them to stay the fuck away from Narconon. It is dangerous, and it's a scam. And that's might be my closing thoughts on it. So once again, thanks guys for joining me. Thanks to everyone in the chat. I've been Jeff, God the Scummer. See you all later. Salute.
hey guys.
All right.